Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijoma. And before we begin our conversation, if you would like to support the podcast, if you enjoy listening to these conversations, please go to convomi.com/support, and there you'll be able to buy me a coffee, a proverbial coffee, and all the money goes to support the production of the podcast. Thank you in advance. And now on to the episode. My guest this week is Deb, and she runs the Etsy shop Bluebird Court Creations. Deb makes the cutest gnomes, and there's a story behind them. They're not just your garden variety gnomes, pun intended, and home decor items. Deb, thanks so much for being my guest, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I really, truly appreciate this opportunity. I've been listening to you for quite some time, and your podcast has really helped me so much. I just really appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you, Deb. I'm so glad to hear that, and thank you for listening to the podcast and for becoming a guest. I feel like it closes the circle when people who listen come on and are guests, because it just makes everything just seem like one family. Like, you listen and now we get to talk, and that makes me happy. So thank you so much for taking the time out to do this.
Thank you. It's great to meet you.
Yeah. All right, so let's dive into it. How would you describe what you do on Etsy? Do you consider yourself more of a maker or an artisan, a crafter? Where would you fall?
I guess I consider myself a maker. I do enjoy making lots of things. I've dabbled in lots of different crafts since I was a little girl. I used to crochet, I used to cross stitch, and did some macrame.
Wow.
And then after I got married and I had two daughters, I got into scrapbooking,
Oh
just
yeah.
to kind of journal their, as they were growing up.
Mhm.
Um, and then when I became an empty nester, I started to upcycle furniture, actually. So I'd take something old and turn it into something that new again.
Mhm.
Um, and then what happened is there was a couple local consignment stores that opened, and they were looking for selling some handmade items. And so I started making signs and pillows, and that eventually led to these handmade gnomes.
Mhm.
And I really enjoy making the handmade gnomes because it's part of what I love to do with you're taking something old and turning it into something new
Mhm.
by upcycling the sweaters and clothing. So I go to thrift stores and I really enjoy finding just the right sweater, to turn into a gnome. So it's really been a lot of fun.
How did you learn to do that?
Um, Honestly, it was just a lot of YouTubing.
Oh,
I
okay.
I really use YouTube a lot. Went
Yeah.
on Pinterest, saw what people were doing, and I just really turned it into something of my own. A lot of people were making these gnomes out of socks.
Mhm.
There
Mhm.
were a few making it, just out of the felt like I do,
Mhm.
um, the felt and sweaters, but it was just really playing around with just the different patterns and making my own pattern and coming up with my own spin on it.
Yeah. Did the store ask for gnomes, or was that your idea and they liked it?
No, they didn't ask for gnomes actually. It was at a time where it was Valentine's and they were looking for some Valentine ideas. And then I was searching Pinterest and then I stumbled across some gnomes. They were, like I said, again, completely kind of different, but it was like, gosh, this would be kind of a cute little idea. And so I
Yeah.
just I just started making the gnomes and they were started to sell. And so that's kind of how that took off.
So at what point did you decide to open your Etsy shop?
I opened it actually in January of 2020, and it was because of my daughters actually were very encouraging me to do so.
Mm.
They themselves had an Etsy shop
Oh.
where they made ombre tie dyed onesies, and I helped them with that shop. So they would come home almost every Sunday. They come home with their kids, and then we would work on the orders that they had.
Oh,
And I
nice.
had the heat press, so they would heat press some heat transfer vinyl on. They would design the little onesies and put that on. So that's kind of how that all started. And they knew I was making these for the different shops, local shops, and they're like, "You really need to open an Etsy store, Mom. You just need to just do it, you know."
Yeah.
So that's what brought me to Etsy.
Which one has been more profitable for you, having your own online shop or selling through brick and mortar stores?
Um, Initially it was the brick and mortar stores,
Mm-hmm.
but then once I got going on Etsy, it's definitely the Etsy has overtaken that. And in
Okay.
fact, the brick and mortar stores are kind of really the sales have really been declining on them, and
Yeah.
but the sales on Etsy are fine. And I think part of that might be because I got in before gnomes were really popular, and then now they're so popular, and
Yeah.
you can find them sometimes, China, the China
Yeah.
gnomes that a lot of the gift shops sell now. So it's a little harder to compete with that in the gift shop realm, but Etsy has been very good.
What do you think the turning point was for why gnomes suddenly just became really popular?
That's a really good question. I really don't know what caused its popularity. I'm just really not certain, but I'm sure glad it did.
I know, I know. I always wonder because yes, one all of a sudden they were everywhere, and I thought I couldn't figure out if it was a movie that popularized them, or a TV show or what have you, but all of a sudden, I mean, they took off.
Yeah, I honestly really don't know what started that
Yeah.
at all. I'm not sure.
Have you have you seen a change in the demand for gnomes between the time you started selling them and now?
Um, Honestly, like my Etsy store has been continuing to increase its sales, and
Mm,
I know that, with anything, it's possibly a trend, and I
mm,
am a little concerned about that, dying down eventually.
mhm.
Um, so I have been starting to kind of look at alternatives of what I could do if that happens. And I know, like, we recently got a glow forge, and my husband actually has been doing a lot of glow forging
Oh,
for me for my
yes.
gnomes. And so just in case we need to pivot, I guess we have another option we could go to if we needed to.
How much do you love your Glowforge?
I do really like it, but honestly, like, I have never used it yet.
Oh,
It's
you
my
haven't?
husband that does. And so he just actually retired this last year.
Okay.
And so he's been just so awesome helping me with it.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's no way I could have kept up with selling as many gnomes as I had if it wasn't for that.
Oh, nice.
Because before I was like, I make things that the gnomes hold for those that aren't familiar with it. So like I'll make a little wood slice that says like happy camper on it, or
Yeah.
courage, or survivor for breast cancer survivor.
Yeah.
And I make these little cardinal gnomes, and now a lot of that can be done with the glow forge. And so it's so much easier than me trying to do it on the Cricut and trying to
Mm.
weed everything. That was very time consuming. Sometimes I swear I spent more time on the things that it holds than I do on the actual making of the gnome.
I know, because they're so dainty. If it looks like those would take a lot of time and effort to create, and then because of their size.
Yes, yeah, it really was very time consuming.
Yeah. And I like that your gnomes are not just, you know, the statue of a gnome. That they each have something unique about them. Like you said, there's an angel one, there's the cancer
Mhm.
survivor one, there's one for hope and what have you. And so there's or holding a coffee cup or something. So they have
Yeah.
something that's unique that sets them apart from like what you might find at a regular retail store.
Exactly. I do a few holiday gnomes
Mm.
for those that like the holiday gnomes, but I do try to make myself a little bit more unique and finding something that can be more personal for a person, like
Mm.
if they're a book lover, I have one where it's holding a little stack of books, it
Yeah,
says book
yeah,
lover, and I do try to make it so that if someone were to gift it, that there's some thought behind it,
yeah,
it pertains to the person.
yeah,
So that's been really a lot of fun.
yeah. So when you first opened your Etsy store after being encouraged by your kids, what expectations did you have coming in?
I didn't have a whole lot just because there were quite a few people who were already selling gnomes.
Mm.
And so it's always that thing in the back of your mind is like, oh, somebody else is already selling it. This is
Mm.
nothing new. But like I said, I did try to pivot myself a little bit and being a little bit more unique by selling things that other people weren't selling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's been great. I'm so glad that they encouraged me. And honestly, it's also been like listening to your podcast too, because just hearing from other sellers and stuff, it's like just open, just try. You have nothing to lose,
Yeah,
It's like 20 cents to list,
yeah,
and yeah, it's been great.
yeah. And that 20 cents really is like 5 cents a month if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, that's true because it's good for 4 months. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, oh, I had a question. Oh, yes. So when you're coming up with a new idea for a gnome, do you do any type of research like to see what themes are trending, or do you just think of like along the lines of like the encouraging gnomes, you have the hope one and the well, I only saw the hope one. But like with the cancer, do you do like a whole line of different cancers so that, for people who are unfortunately afflicted with different types, they can get one that's very personalized to what they're going through?
Right. So I was only doing the breast cancer ones. And then just recently I've added like the blue for to represent colon cancer.
Mm.
And that's actually my goal for 2023 is to add more
Yeah.
different types of cancer gnomes. So putting the colored ribbon on there as well
Yeah.
as the colored hat. So that's definitely something I'm hoping to expand this next year.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, have you found that just having items that are so unique helps you to stand out enough that you don't need to focus as much on Etsy SEO, or do you put a significant amount of time into really honing your keywords and tags and your titles and all whatnot?
I have done some research on it and again like listening to different podcasts and stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I have used eRank,
Oh yeah.
and I don't pay the subscription
Mm-hmm.
fee. I just do the whatever is free.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of does help. So like if I'm just looking for people who might sell something that's cancer related, it kind of helps with different tags,
Oh
of what
right.
you could put for what people might be searching for.
Yeah.
So I do try to use, maybe what other people would be searching for when it comes to like the cancer gnomes.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. When you first started your store, do you remember how long it took for the momentum to build? Did you start getting sales right away, or did it take some time before you started showing up?
Actually, surprisingly, I did get sales right away. I did well. So initially, I did start with just having like an Instagram account with my Bluebird Court Creations Instagram,
Yeah.
and then I think I had around, I want to say it was close to 500 followers before I then opened up the shop. So there
Oh,
were a few people who would say, "Hey, do you sell them?" And I always said, "No, I just sell them on consignment, locally and stuff." But then I
uh-huh.
had enough people like inquire that that was kind of part of the reason too that I decided to open the Etsy shop. So there were a couple people right off the bat, luckily, that I'd say, "Hey, I'm just opening this Etsy shop.
Yeah.
If you're interested, could you," and then I would send them the link with a coupon code. And that's what started it. But I kind of looked back and it was like I opened it the end of January, and I did get 5 orders within the week that I
Oh,
opened, and
whoa.
then about 14 orders came in the next month. So
So you were
yeah,
like,
and it's just been kind of steady,
yeah,
since then.
that's so wonderful. You were like out, like out into the races, like right from almost day one, really.
Yeah, I was fortunate that, it was at the time where gnomes were just starting to become popular,
Yeah,
and I think that helped as well. But then and maybe it was a little bit of, building a little bit of, I don't know if you call them clientele, but just from, some people who found me on Instagram that wanted to make a purchase. So that
right,
was kind of helpful as well.
right. And for anyone who wants to check out Deb's Instagram, she's at Bluebird Creation. I'm sorry, Bluebird Court Creations on Instagram. I will have a link in the show notes for this episode, but if you want to hop over there, you have your phone in your hand. She's Bluebird Court Creations on Instagram. Deb, what does a typical day look like in the life of running Bluebird Court Creations?
Well, honestly, I do have a full-time job, so this is just a side hustle for me, so to speak.
And a good one
Um,
too.
so so the morning looks like so before I start I do work from home
Okay.
for my full-time job, so that's been helpful in that, like, the right before I start work at 8 a.m., from 7 to 8. That's usually like when, if I had any orders come in the evening,
Hmm.
or the day before, that's when I will go ahead and get them all ready to ship. And then my husband will always take them to the post office. If there's more than two that don't fit in the mailbox, he'll go and run them over to the post office
Okay.
by lunch so that they get shipped out or ready to St. Paul by the afternoon. Um, and then so after my work day, like during my work day, like at lunchtime, I usually have the chance to then like take some photos of any gnomes that I would have made the evening before.
Okay.
So like typically I might make like maybe, I don't know, about 4 gnomes between the hours of like 6:30 to 8:30, and then
AM?
I will photo. Yep,
Oh,
yep.
wow.
And then so the next day then I would ship them and
Hmm.
then make take pictures and post them. And really it varies by day. It depends, like obviously in the summertime it's like super quiet and there's not as much,
Mm.
but I honestly try not to work on the gnomes any more than like 2 hours a day making the gnomes, actually sewing the gnomes.
Oh, wow.
Um, but then on the weekends, on Saturday, I usually will put in probably a good 5 to 6 hours working on them. Um,
Okay.
and that's usually like, so on those days, I'll like cut the bodies, and cut a whole bunch of beards to get me through the week because I found that it's a lot easier and quicker to make them if you already have most everything pre-cut ahead of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a lot easier during your work day, or your work evenings to work on them. So
And actually, you answered a question which I had, which was, do you make them all from scratch in those 2 hours a day? So,
hmm
but you have things set up so that you assemble them during the week,
right.
and then okay, yeah.
Yeah. So like I will take the sweaters and cut the sweaters, the arm, like the hats and the arms, usually the day that I'm going to be sewing them. But the
Hmm.
bodies and the beards and the items that they
And the
hold,
signs.
those are all pre-made then
Okay.
ahead of time before I work on them typically.
How do you know like how much to keep in stock?
I usually try to keep. my inventory online to be between 50 and 70 items.
Mm,
It's just been working for me to do it that way. Um, so I just kind of make them as I sell them. I
okay.
don't keep a lot of the same gnome on hand. Like they're almost all different anyway.
Yeah.
So I just like if like let's just say this happy camper gnome has been kind of a popular one. Like just as soon as someone buys it, then okay, then that night I'll make a different one to add back in. So some of those popular
Oh,
gnomes that I know sell pretty well, I'll try to just keep, replenishing as they
okay.
sell.
And because you make some of them from using upcycled sweaters, when a particular sweater is exhausted, then is that the end of the life of that particular design as well of the gnome?
Yeah. Well, okay, so like my coffee mug ones that I sell,
Hmm.
I always do coffee mugs because they're a good seller for me, but they will have different sweaters for sure. Like I
Okay.
do try to stick with it seems like people like the black and white sweaters. So I always try to
Mm,
find those, but yeah, they're almost always going to be different. And that's why
okay.
I'm constantly taking new photos and then
Yeah.
just replacing the listing with the new photo of the
Okay.
new sweater.
Okay, because I was thinking, how like do customers notice if it's different, or do you just swap them out?
Yeah,
But yes, that makes sense.
yeah, I do. I was always just making a new listing all the time, but then um I don't know, I think with the algorithm and stuff, it's just better if you can renew a listing if it keeps selling. And
Right.
so then I just, as long as it's like a similar color and it's so at least the person is, actually getting obviously what they're expecting.
Yeah. Have you had anyone ever who wasn't happy with what they got?
Um, no, not really. I guess I haven't. I think there's been like one time where somebody had said, "Oh, there was a little bit of glue showing or something on the hand that they weren't
Mm,
happy with."
mm,
I accidentally had a little glue spot or something like that, and
mm-hmm.
I immediately just contact them and apologize and offer them a discount or even just to swap it. That I would swap it with my, and pay for the shipping.
Yeah. Did they take you up on that?
I've had one person take me up on swapping one, and the other one, no, they just no, it's fine. It's really not that big of a deal. But then I gave them a discount anyway.
Oh, okay. I wonder why. You know how some people will say something and then you're like, oh, let me make it right. And then they don't really want you to. Sometimes I
Yes,
think also,
yes,
why did we have this whole conversation?
exactly. Yeah,
But at least you try to make them whole. So I guess for some people, that's all they want is the effort.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one time where I had actually swapped the it was a St. Patrick's Day gnome and somebody ordered a small one and somebody had a large one. And somehow I got the labels mixed up.
Oh
And so
no.
the wrong person got it. And
Yeah.
and both their names were Jennifer and I think their last name started with even an M. So that's
Oh
kind
my
of probably
goodness.
how it happened. But anyway, one is like, I received this gnome, but I don't think this is the one I ordered. And sure enough, I looked and oh my goodness. So then what I did in that case, thank goodness, I had the same sweater for both of those
Yeah.
people. So I was able to make a new gnome and I said, you know what, just keep the one you got and
Mm-hmm.
I'll just send you the one that you really ordered.
Yeah.
So both of them ended up with two gnomes.
Two
And of course,
gnomes, the
I
best of
didn't
both
charge
worlds.
them for it, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I bet they were happy though.
Yeah, I think they were.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that makes for repeat business. Like, oh,
Exactly.
maybe she'll
Yes.
make another mistake and I'll get two gnomes for the price of one.
Mm.
um, how do you determine how much to charge for your gnomes? I would imagine because you were in brick and mortar stores that might have informed the pricing, but how did you come up with your prices?
Well, yeah, so I started with the brick and mortar stores. So when you do consignment
Mm-hmm.
through them, you're only getting the 50 to 60% of it. They're taking the 40 to 50%
Mm.
profit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So right off the bat that, you have to price it enough that you, you know, you will get half of it, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of what started the pricing, and they were selling just fine in the store with that price.
Yeah.
So then that's how I knew like to sell on Etsy with that too, because honestly, Etsy's fees is less than a consignment store fees. So
Yeah, I never thought about that. You're right.
yeah, I mean, people complain a lot about Etsy fees, but it's like this is like nothing like compared to if you were to sell it, wholesale. Um,
Yeah.
so I guess I've never really complained about Etsy fees.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The I wouldn't even go down that road, but yes, fees are a part of selling on the platform, and yes, I know for people who have been around for a while, it hurts. I understand that pain, but it could be worse. It could be much worse.
Yeah. And when you were talking about the pricing too, I mean, part of it too, though, is you do have to, like, it kind of can cost a lot to ship,
Mm-hmm.
and so I do, for the most part, have people pay for shipping. I do the free shipping if it's over $35 because I
Okay.
heard that by offering that, you usually get bumped up in the
Yeah.
algorithm, the search algorithm,
Yep.
I guess, a little bit better if you do provide some kind of a free shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then so other than, but I usually price them right at around like $34 or $33, a lot of them. So then the customer does pay for shipping.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and I mean you have the box too that you ship it in, and the labels and the stickers and
Mm-hmm.
and your business cards, and it's all that other stuff that I think some people don't always think about, when they consider the cost of business. There's a
Yeah.
lot of the behind the scenes cost and time,
Yes. Oh,
the time to
absolutely.
replenish all your supplies and the time it takes you to ship it and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I was recently talking with someone who is just starting out on Etsy, um and of course, how well, even us earlier in our conversation, how we said, it's just 20 cents, to start.
Hmm.
And I was walking her through the listing process, and then we were talking about pricing, and I said, well, how much do you want to charge? How much have you put into making your product? And then she said this amount. I said, okay, then how much is shipping? This amount. And then I said, okay, but you also have to package it. You have to, make sure it's secure when you're sending it. So you have to buy all those things. And we were using an online um uh Etsy fee calculator, and it was such an eye opener for her because she thought,
Hmm.
oh my goodness, I didn't realize all these things go into how much I should be charging, because, there's the transaction fee, and, what Etsy takes off on the back end of the sale. And so I was encouraging her to think about that at the front end of doing her pricing so that she still comes out making some kind of profit in the end.
And another charge that a lot of people don't think about is your taxes.
Yeah.
It was quite an eye opener for me. I know, like you're paying your 15%, your payroll tax that they take out at the end of the year, and then
Yeah.
plus whatever income you make. If you're whatever in the 20% tax bracket, that's 20% on top of the 15. So, there's a lot that goes out that end as well. I know you
Yeah.
can subtract obviously a lot of your expenses and that, but still, it still definitely has to be a factor when you're pricing things up front.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, for a new seller, I know, it seems kind of overwhelming to think about all these things, but it gets easier, and sometimes, when you've been burned, you figure it out.
Yes. Exactly. Mm.
um, so Deb, what are some of the more effective ways that you found to promote your stores? I know we touched on Etsy SEO a bit already, and I know you're on Instagram. Are you doing anything else to drive traffic to your shop or your products?
I did open up a Facebook business account too, but then
Oh,
I just tie that to Instagram. When I
okay.
found out you could just tie it and not actually have to post separately on
Mm.
Facebook, I had started to do that. I honestly don't get much traction there though at all. It just seems like every time you go there, it'll say, "Oh, 30 people saw your post. Do you want to boost your post?" And of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
then you have to pay just
Yeah.
for another 100 people to see it, or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And but I do have TikTok, but I
Oh.
rarely ever post on there. It was just getting to be a lot.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but I do have an account there, and then I do have Pinterest too.
Have you found that Pinterest is a major traffic driver for you?
I don't know. So uh, Pinterest still has me a little baffled because honestly, like with Pinterest, I was initially always just like if I posted one of my gnomes, then I'd put a link to my gnome
Mm-hmm.
directly, for Etsy to take me to the. But the problem is my gnome would be sold out so much because I was always making those new listings, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
it would be sold. So then I started to put it just to my store link, like not to that specific item, but to the store link. But
Yeah.
then as I'm hearing other people, what other people say, oh, you should never drive traffic to Etsy. You should be driving it to your own website. Well, I don't have my own website, but I do have a link tree account.
Mm,
So
yeah.
then now I start pointing it to Linktree because then on Linktree you can say, I want to go to Etsy, I want to go to Instagram, I
Yeah.
want to go to Facebook, I want to go to TikTok. Um, and then that way, then they can still get to Etsy. Um, so I don't really know with the numbers though, like, from Etsy, then exactly how many are really coming from Pinterest because I think if it goes to Linktree, it might show up in Etsy as direct. I really don't know.
Oh, that's so. I like that strategy for a couple of reasons. But what was I going to ask you? Does Linktree show you statistics?
It does, I think, if you pay for it,
Oh,
but
okay, okay.
I don't pay for anything.
I hear you.
Yeah, I haven't, and I've been tempted to think maybe I should just, pay a monthly fee just to,
Um,
but honestly,
you
I've been
know,
busy enough
I
and
was
I
going to.
really just don't have the time to look into
Yeah,
all the statistics that maybe if I was very serious about really wanting to grow it, I would definitely do all that. But
yeah.
right now I've been staying busy enough, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're making sales and you're busy enough, don't get bogged down looking at stuff. I mean, it's good to know your numbers. There's some numbers that you should know and keep track of, but obviously something is working because you're staying busy. But also, another reason I like your strategy of sending it to Linktree is one of the things, and I don't know if this is still the case. I do believe it still is. Um, when traffic comes to Etsy from a social media link, so Etsy treats traffic differently depending on where it comes from. I'm not
Hmm.
sure if you were aware of that. And so, depending on where it comes from, they will show other stores on the same page as your listing
Hmm.
or not. And I think if you do a direct link to your store, like let's say you have a link in your email and someone clicks on that and goes directly to your listing or your store, that's exactly where they land. But if it's a link that comes from a social media platform, then they see like they'll see Etsy ads, they'll see other products from other sellers that are similar to yours, and it kind of does get confusing. But then, hey, Etsy's trying to sell stuff. So if they make a sale,
Right.
right? Yeah. So going to your link tree, I think, and I don't know because I've never done this myself, but I would imagine that if they go to your link tree and then from link tree click to the link to your Etsy shop, that it would be a direct link. So then they just get to your, they just land
Hmm.
in your shop or in your product, and they don't see all the ads and all whatnot.
Yeah, well, that
Yeah.
that would be great. I honestly don't know if they do get that. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're doing a search or something, a coffee gnome, and then oh, here's some other ones by other
Yeah.
sellers. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I will say, um before I used your link tree, a few times to get to your shop, and I always just
Mhm.
got directly to you, your shop. I didn't see, all the other noise
Oh,
surrounding.
that's good to know.
Yeah,
That's great to
yeah.
know.
So,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, another thing like with Etsy too, it does say like how many, what percentage comes from Etsy searches or versus like your own. And
Mhm.
it's always been like 80% has been coming supposedly from Etsy and only 20% from, the social media accounts.
Ah.
And so it's like, gosh, I feel like I put like plenty of effort already, like into Instagram and into like
Yeah.
Facebook and Pinterest and stuff that it's kind of sad to think that it's only 20% of your
Yeah.
buyers are coming from there when you put so much effort into it. You know what I mean?
I know, I
But
know. Yeah. So with Instagram, like what do you do? Do you try to post every day? Do you do reels? Do you do stories? What's the strategy you have for that?
I do stories quite a bit. I do try to
Mhm.
do stories. Because then it's more informal, like I'll
Mhm.
just take, like at night when I get done making gnomes, I'll just like, oh, here's what I made tonight, and just have a picture out there so people would know what's to come.
Yeah.
Um, I had been trying to post almost every day, but no, I'm kind of going back a little bit and just taking more time for myself and thinking, like even if I do 3 days a week on a post, that's enough
Yeah.
probably, you know.
I mean, you are working full time. It's not like you don't have it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Um So, have you found, do you find time to get involved in the Etsy community, like with teams and um, the forums and what have you, or no?
I never have with an Etsy. I have an Instagram, with a few different groups.
Hmm.
Just because sometimes they'll have like a monthly like online market,
On
and it might get
Instagram?
some new people. Yeah,
Huh.
like part of this group that they'll say, "Hey, go to this hashtag," and then um, on a weekend or something, they'll say, "Go to this hashtag," and then all the sellers who happen to be selling, and it's usually like 20 people,
Hmm.
will have a sale. And sometimes like if you go to the hashtag, you'll see they'll have a special coupon code that they might run, like,
Hmm.
hey, you can take 15% off with this code, and you still can send them to your Etsy shop. Or a lot of people have Shopify, you know
Hmm.
but it's just kind of a way for other people to maybe see you. So I do some of that, but I've never done the actual Etsy teams or really gotten involved with anything there.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. I think, I mean, I know the teams still exist, but honestly, I haven't been very active in them lately. And I know a couple of years ago, Etsy tried to revive them, like veer people more in that direction. I don't know how successful it was. They're still there for sure, but I don't hang out much
I
there
noticed
either.
they've been offering a little bit more assistance for
Education.
Etsy sellers
Yeah.
with some of their videos, their webinars that they've been offering. So I
Yes.
do sometimes watch those occasionally.
Yeah. Were
But
were
that's
there
about it.
Were there any in particular you watched that you found helpful?
Um, I guess it's just kind of interesting, like to listen to their trends one,
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Oh yeah,
When they
yeah,
say what trends are coming or like what colors people might be decorating with,
yes,
that sort of thing.
yeah,
That can be kind of interesting.
yeah. I do like the trend reports that they put out. I think it's very informative. And I watched one webinar that they did on TikTok for Etsy sellers, which was also very informative. It was very educational. I didn't use the information to do anything, unfortunately, but for anyone who did, I can imagine that, it would have been helpful to them.
Mhm.
And I don't know if they make those available elsewhere. I would imagine if they have like an Etsy YouTube channel, they would put them on there. But it's nice to attend live because they have the Q&A sessions, and I feel like they're really good about sharing information and what works and what doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty interesting usually. I
Yeah.
haven't attended a lot, but I just noticed that they it looks like they're going to have quite a few in 2023. So I think they're kind of ramping up a little bit more that direction
Yeah.
with helping sellers a little bit better.
Yeah. And for anyone who is wondering how to get in on all this, if you go to the community section on Etsy, and usually if you just scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, if you're just on etsy.com somewhere and you go to the bottom of the page, you'll either see a link for community or forums or teams or something like that. And then you can just jump in there and see what's going on. But I do think they are making an effort to put more education and information out there for anyone who wants to learn from them directly. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. And the seller handbook, I feel like we don't talk about the seller handbook as much, but it's such a good resource, which I think gets overlooked quite a bit, but it's really helpful.
Mhm.
For Do you ever find sometimes that new ideas just aren't coming to you for creations that you want to make? And how do you get yourself out of those ruts if you get into them?
Honestly, I don't feel like I get into them. My Oh my God, my head is like spinning all the time with new ideas. There's just not enough hours in a day to, to
Mm.
I usually don't get too much really in a rut. Honestly, like I do take custom orders too from people. And
Oh.
so I occasionally will, and they sometimes are the ones that give me the ideas. Like for instance, the angel one has been my most popular, and honestly, like I would never have made that had somebody not asked me, "Could you please make me an angel?"
Oh.
So that's how that came to be, and the same with my cardinal gnomes. I'm always with you. That one too. Somebody had said, "Hey, do you think you can make a gnome holding a cardinal and for a
Oh.
loss of somebody?" And
Yeah.
that's how that got made too. So usually there's no shortage of ideas, just
Yeah.
because people are constantly giving me them. Um, so that's been kind of nice too.
Yeah. I like, and that's one thing I have to say I really enjoy about selling on Etsy is the fact that I feel like the people who shop on Etsy are more likely to ask for things, and that tends to spur on product ideas for the sellers,
Hmm.
as opposed to say on Amazon, where there's like a breakdown in communication between the customer and the sellers on Amazon. And I shouldn't say a breakdown, it's not built that way for that type of communication.
Not
Oh,
as personal, I imagine.
yeah, yeah. Did you find that when Etsy started running the TV ads in the US that things picked up for you as well, or you couldn't tell a difference?
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess that could be part of it because, my sales have been increasing, since I started.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be part of it. I know that the first couple of times I saw those Etsy ads, I'm like, yes, that's so cool that they're doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was even during the Super Bowl or something I saw one. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe, they would have an ad during the Super Bowl. That was kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know. I've seen it. I didn't watch the Super Bowl, but I have seen it come on at just, in the middle of just shows I would think were just unlikely to that you would see an Etsy ad. And I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. I want to shop on Etsy too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think the early ones, not I think, I remember that the earlier ones they did, they actually would put the shop names in the corner. I haven't seen it on the more recent ones, which I
Oh
thought was
yeah.
kind of nice that they had the shop names in the corner because for, and I know this because we would DVR some shows, and so you could actually pause it and see the
Oh,
shop name and then look them up. So, I thought that was nice, but lately I haven't seen them show individual shop names, and I wish they would add those back in because it's kind of a nice twist.
another thing that I think they did too is the show Making It. If you've ever seen that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And and so they've had people from Etsy on there, doing the
Mhm.
judging and stuff. And I wonder too if that helped Etsy at all when they did that, a way of marketing.
Oh, yes. Okay. So, huh, how do I tile this together? Um, yes. Okay. Let me preface it by saying I don't
Okay.
I don't know this for a fact, but these are just threads I've tied together and I think put a picture together. NBC Universal, I think, might have been, trying to do something with Etsy and NBC Universal because was making it on NBC.
I believe so, but boy, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember. But if it was on NBC, I know there was a time NBC Universal was like they were trying to get something going with Etsy because they reached out to me and to do something because that was right before making it was starting, which I didn't know was going to end up being making it. And I can talk about this because I didn't sign any non-disclosures or anything.
Okay.
So yeah.
It is NBC. I
Is
did
it?
just Google it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yes, there's something going on and I think there's more to come, but I'm not
Oh,
on
it
the.
says Making It has been canceled, so there will not be a season 4.
Yeah, maybe not making it, but
At least for now is
for
how it's
now.
phrased.
Yes. Yeah, or maybe it just didn't work out the way they wanted it to. I don't know, but I know that there was something going on with NBC Universal. Okay.
Hmm.
Um when you get an idea typically for a new product, what's the turnaround time to, from inception to coming up with the design and then having it ready to sell?
Usually not long because
Mm.
I'm impatient. Like if I just come up with this idea and I just like, oh, I just want to try, I just immediately, just start working on it, I guess. But I mean, I guess there are some times when I am kind of busy and I'll just write it down for another day. But usually I do try working on it as soon as I come up with it. Otherwise, I'll forget about it.
Yeah. How long does it take you to put, well, I guess from start to finish, because you break up the process, I know.
Hmm.
But typically, how long does it take you to get like one gnome all done?
I probably spent, um, I would say probably close to an hour, maybe
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that'd be about it. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, if I it's kind of hard to say just because like sometimes I do the bodies and then I cut up the beards and then I
Mm-hmm.
sew one day and then I'll assemble another day. So it's a little hard, but I would
Yeah.
say by the time you, especially if you figure in the fact that you are taking pictures and posting it on Etsy,
Yeah.
and then like even by the time you sell it and you're shipping it and you're printing out the invoice, and it's definitely at least an hour, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. And you do all your own product photography?
Yes. It's
Okay.
just with my phone. Honestly,
Yeah. They look
yeah.
great.
I'm lucky that honestly, like, so my studio is above a garage.
Mm-hmm.
It's this bonus room, and it has skylights in it. It has two skylights in it, and
Oh.
they always say skylights are like the best to have for photography.
Oh, really?
So I get a lot of natural light up here in the studio.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's just really been very, very helpful for me.
Oh, nice. Yeah. And I bet it filters out glare too, so you just have that nice light, like studio
Hmm.
type lighting, but without all the umbrellas and stuff.
Yeah, I don't own any of the umbrellas. I wouldn't even know how to use that. Mm.
Right. Now, Deb, looking back at your journey on Etsy so far, what are some things that you would say that you think you have done or you did that have helped set you up to be successful on Etsy?
Um, I would just say, well, what helped me out was seeing the whole process before I even um, dived into it. With my daughters having the store, so that was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing that when you want to put something up for sale, just keep in mind, okay, how am I going to ship this? What kind
Mm-hmm.
of a container am I going to need? And then another thing too for me with these gnomes was how much it weighs. So like if it's over a pound, you're automatically like over that limit where you're
Yeah.
paying like the $7 to $8 for sure for
Yeah.
shipping.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can get your item to be under a pound, then it's a lot cheap. You can usually do it for like my gnomes usually I think are about $6 or so to ship.
Okay.
Maybe 5.50, $6.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of helpful to know all that, to determine that too
Mm-hmm.
before
Mm-hmm.
you start your Etsy shop, I think.
Yeah. So are they under a pound?
They're just under a pound. Yeah,
Oh,
they
phew.
are.
Yes, because that you're right. That pound line um is so is so critical to the a price hike in shipping.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, if they order two gnomes, and obviously but
Yeah.
then that, makes up for the price difference anyway if you're buying
Yeah.
two. But
Do you just
then
use straight Etsy shipping or do you use a third party?
I use Etsy shipping.
Okay.
I find it's just as cheap as anything else. I know other people have said, "Oh, I don't know, is it Pirate Ship or
Yeah, I've heard pirate ship.
there's just so many other ones." But I kind of compared, and it's just like a quarter or like 30 cents. It's just really wasn't enough to make it worth it for me to try a different. The address is
Mhm.
right there, the ability to
Yeah.
print an invoice is right there, the ability just to print the shipping label, it's all right in the app, and it's just, oh,
Mhm.
it's so easy to
Yeah.
just leave everything there, I feel like. Anyway, it's
Yeah.
definitely worth it.
Yeah. I feel like for anyone who has for whom shipping is an uncomplicated process, then Etsy shipping is just the least is the most hassle-free way to go. But then I do understand that some people, do furniture and things that have odd dimensions and all whatnot, and then it probably is more helpful to look outside of Etsy for that. But yes, if shipping is straightforward, oh, just keep it simple. Give
In
yourself
fact,
one less headache.
I think that if you were to like go to the post office and ship something outside of Etsy, I believe it's like 13 ounces you actually end up paying more for.
Yeah, I think you're
Um,
right. Mm-hmm.
but through Etsy, they give you that
Yeah.
16 ounce.
Yep.
And so that makes the huge difference right there for me because that's
Mm-hmm.
right, that would be on the edge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep, you're right. I forgot about that too. Okay, so let's talk about Etsy, the platform itself. What is one thing about selling on Etsy that you really like, you enjoy a lot, and is there any feature that doesn't currently exist on the Etsy platform that you would like to see one day?
Um, so with the Etsy platform, for some reason, I have had issues when I go on the app on my phone.
Mm.
And for some reason, when I make a new listing, even though it says the shipping profile, it when I go on the web, it's like there's no shipping profile. And I don't know why that is, but I found that out the hard way because I wasn't getting like my badge for shipping. And I'm like, what the heck? How can that possibly be? Because I'm like, I feel like I'm the fastest shipper in the world. Like, literally,
Yeah.
I typically get things shipped out of here within 24 hours, and
Mm.
didn't get my shipping badge. Well, then when I looked further into it, it was because it said there was no shipping profile attached to the item. So there were quite a
Oh.
few things that when I looked on the web, like if I actually looked on it on my computer, I noticed there was no shipping profile attached. So now every time that I make a new listing versus just renewing one,
Uh-huh.
I always have to go on my computer or I have to say desktop mode on my phone to add the shipping. And
Oh.
I don't know why that is. I thought maybe that would be changed with the new app because they do have a
Yeah.
I still have the same problem. So I don't understand because I use their calculated shipping is the
Mm-hmm.
profile that I use. So I'm not really
That's
sure
that's so
exactly
odd
why
that
that is.
it would let you um go all the way through and not have a shipping profile attached.
Yeah, and it's like it shows on my phone like it should be there, but
Yeah.
then like I said, when I actually go to the site, it's not. So I
Hmm.
don't know. I have to look into that. But one other thing that I wish that Etsy did do too is when you have a new listing, it would give you an option to tie it to a coupon code if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do typically give my customers after they purchase one, I give them a coupon code for
Mm.
being a repeat customer.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I forget, like anytime there's a new listing, I have to manually know to add it to that code. So in case if a person does come back and wants to
Oh.
buy it,
Yeah.
so that's kind of been a little bit of a pain point for me, I guess, so to speak. It's just always having to remember to go to that finances and go to that or the Etsy marketing and go to that coupon code and then add any new listings to that
Oh, I
code.
see. So having a blanket coupon code that would cover everything is what would work for you without you
Mm.
manually adding new products to to the code as to say that the discount applies to this as well, right?
Right. And
Hmm.
yeah, and honestly, it would just be nice like when they have a new listing that say, "Hey, do you want to apply any of your coupon codes to it?" And then you would just click, "Yes, apply this coupon code." That would be really cool.
So are you saying the way it works now is if you create a coupon code today and then you add a new listing in 2 days, the
Hmm.
coupon code will not apply to the new listing if you don't specify that the new listing should be included in the coupon code?
That's correct. Unless if you're
Oh.
using their predefined coupon codes. Like for instance, I think
Oh.
like if people favor your shop, if you set it that it'll automatically send them a coupon code, those are automatic
Mm-hmm.
because it's their coupon code.
Okay.
But if you have your own coupon code, I always have to manually apply the listings that I want to pertain to that coupon code.
Oh, I see. That's tedious.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. But I found if I renew a listing,
Mm-hmm.
then it's already there, then it's fine.
Okay.
But the new
Okay.
ones, I do. I've had a couple people reach out, hey, I was wondering if your coupon code still works. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I need to
Oh.
apply it. So,
Oh. Yeah, because I was going to say, well, how did you figure that out? But yeah,
you know,
it makes
they
sense.
let me know.
Oh yeah, I would too if I had a
Some
coupon code.
customers do.
Deb,
um,
what
mhm.
advice do you have for um, new sellers out there who are um, just trying to figure out how to find their footing on Etsy? I mean, for you, it almost seems like everything just clicked from day one, but it's not always that way for some other people. What advice would you say to that person for whom right now it just doesn't seem to be clicking?
I'd say continue to listen to your podcast
Oh,
and get
thank you.
ideas from from people who've been selling on Etsy,
Mm,
and just do some research, with other, there's YouTube videos, and there's just
yeah.
different forums you can join, even on Facebook there's Etsy forums. You can ask other people, just reach out to people. People are very helpful, and love
Mm,
to see other people succeed.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, just reach out and do research if you have any issues or questions.
Yeah. And that's what, thank you, Deb. I have found that, the Etsy community, um a lot of people are really helpful, like just genuinely open to helping others. Um and and I can compare that to, because I sell on eBay and Amazon. It's not the same.
Oh,
Yeah.
I haven't sold on those platforms, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but
Yeah, no, it's not. Whenever I go into, like, I so I don't really hang out on Facebook a lot, but I am in a couple of Discord channels for selling on Amazon or eBay. And whenever I go in, sometimes, and I have a question, I'm like, oh man, I hope nobody says anything mean or sarcastic, or what have you. I just want an answer. And so you have to grow a thick skin, because sometimes that person will come along and make you feel stupid, but then,
oh,
somebody else will eventually come along and give you the answer. But sometimes you have to um be very humble
oh my goodness.
when you're looking for help. And I found that on Etsy it's quite different. Like, people are just helpful and, open and willing to share. So thank you for sharing that. And I love that um, folks like you come on and want to share your story and your journey, because I know it's encouraging to someone who might be struggling right now and just feel like it's not working or it's not clicking. And then just hearing what you're doing, even if they're doing something different. I just like the idea that um, hearing that it's working for you can be encouraging to somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
Are there any tools or resources that you use in your day-to-day running your Etsy shop that you found particularly helpful?
No, I guess probably just like E-rank occasionally,
Mm-hmm.
just to get ideas for what
Yeah.
to use for tags,
Yeah.
for your SEO.
Mm-hmm.
I found that tool is really helpful. Um, and for myself, like I use Excel a lot. I'm very familiar with Excel, so like I'm constantly like downloading the various reports and stuff you can get from Etsy,
Oh
to track
yeah.
your expenses and
Yeah.
all of that. So I just use Excel myself for most of it.
Okay. And I will have a link to eRank for anyone who wants to check it out. And Deb uses the free version, so don't feel pressured to have to subscribe. I think eRank is really generous with what they um let you do with the free version. I like that. I've forgotten the guy's name. Anthony is very generous with that tool. Okay, now some fun. Deb, do you have an Etsy shop shout out? And I'm guessing you do because you have kids who sell on Etsy.
Actually, they have since closed their shop. So I
No, why?
Oh, yeah. Well, they both have kids of
Oh,
their
yeah.
own now, and life got busy, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
So they have my daughter has had three different shops, and it's
Oh,
and
wow.
she is, oh my God, she's so creative.
Oh,
Um
do you think she'll
she's
ever
had
come
knitting
back?
and drawing, and now she's into photography.
Oh, wow.
So now she kind of closed her other shops, but I do have a good friend of mine, Joellen. Her shop is Hidden Ridge Designs. If you go on Instagram, and on Etsy, it's called Hidden Ridge Design Company or Hidden Ridge Design Co.
Okay.
And she is another person from Wisconsin on the other side of the state. And
Hmm.
I met her actually just through Instagram, and we ended up becoming very good friends. And we get together and go camping with our spouses now a couple of times a
Whoa.
year. It's been a lot of fun.
And that was just from meeting on Instagram? That
It
is so
was. We just,
wild.
I don't know, we just got to chatting and found out we had so much in common. I mean,
Oh,
it
nice.
just was crazy with how much we had in common.
Oh,
And then she got a camper, and she knew I was into camping and was asking camping questions. And then before you know it, it's like, hey, we should just, meet each other. So we
wow.
did. We went
Did you have
camping
any,
together, and
sorry, did you have any trepidation about meeting someone from the internet online
yes,
in
a
person?
little bit, but when you're at a public place at a campground, it can't be that bad, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, no. I just felt like I knew her well just through chatting. I
yeah.
I wasn't concerned at all.
Okay, so her Etsy shop is Hidden Ridge Design Co. What does Joellen sell?
She sells things like tumblers and mugs and
Mm.
keychains and knitted hats. She is, I call her the crafting queen because she really, truly is into so much stuff. She has a lot of knowledge of
Oh,
using the Cricut and the silhouette, and she does sublimation,
oh wow.
um, and iron-ons, and she's into a lot of different things.
Oh, yeah. I am impressed by people who know how to. There's this one lady who does cricket tutorials, and it just blows my mind watching her. And I almost this, I haven't. I still have my. So I downgraded from wanting the glow forge to a cricket because I was like,
Oh,
okay, I can do a cricket. I can't do a glow forge.
they're both awesome.
They both are.
They're
They
both, you
definitely
can't go
both
wrong with
are.
either one, I don't think.
I am so impressed just watching people use them on YouTube. Like for me it's like, relaxing, and I keep saying I want to learn, but I just get so much joy watching other people use. I feel like if I were to get mine, and this is probably why I haven't gotten it, that I still would be happier watching other people create stuff than actually making stuff myself, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
So I will have a link to Joellen's Etsy shop so folks can go and check her out. It's Hidden Ridge Design Co. And if you do check out what she's doing, let her know that Deb sent you. Thanks, Deb, for that. I will put a link to her shop. What's the
Great.
best way folks can connect with you if they want to reach out and stay in touch or ask any questions?
Probably the best place would be Instagram because I do check that all the time. Or
Okay.
obviously they could send a message through Etsy as well if they find my Etsy shop and have any questions. But yeah, just feel free to DM me. Just send me a message, say hello, let me know you've
Mm-hmm.
listened to this. If you've gotten anything out of it, I'd sure love to know what you got out of
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Um, and I want to encourage people to, if you are listening to these podcasts, seriously, buy Jama a coffee.
Oh,
Support her, give her a follow.
oh I'm so
Um,
shy. Thank you so much, Deb. I appreciate that. Thank you. And yes, please go check out what Deb is doing. Her Etsy shop is Bluebird Court Creations. I will, of course, have a link to it in the show notes for this episode. But if you want to type it in, it's Bluebird CT Creations. If you're looking for it on the Etsy app or online, and on Instagram, she's Bluebird Court Creations. And like I said, I will have links to where you can reach out to Deb and connect with her online. Deb, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for your patience and just being gracious when we had to reschedule. I really do appreciate that, and I have so enjoyed chatting with you. I hope we can do this again.
oh, I would love to. I really appreciate you having me on here. This was very outside my comfort zone, but you just
Oh,
made it seem so effortless. It's been great. Thank you so much.
oh, thank you. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. And hey, maybe one day in the future, your girls will be back on Etsy, and we can do like a whole Etsy Convo Party podcast episode.
That would be great.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank
And
you.
I thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. I will be back with another one next week.